How your childhood shapes your money. Behavior. Most people believe their money habits are logical. They think they spend because they want something. They save because they're disciplined. They invest because they're smart. They avoid money because they're careless. But very little about money behavior is logical. It's learned, and most of it was learned long before you ever earned a paycheck. Your relationship with money didn't begin with your first job. It began in childhood. Quietly, indirectly, emotionally. You didn't learn money through spreadsheets. You learned it through experiences. Let's start with the truth that makes many people uncomfortable. Money behavior is not about numbers. It's about safety. And safety, for most people, was first negotiated in childhood. Now let's talk about how learning actually happens. Children don't learn by instruction. They learn by observation. They absorb tone, emotion, reactions, patterns. So when it comes to money, children don't remember what adults said. They remember how money felt in the home. Was money calm? Was it tense? Was it a source of arguments? Was it avoided? Was it unpredictable? Those emotional signals taught the nervous system what money means. Now let's talk about scarcity environments. In homes where money was tight, children often learned vigilance. They watched adults worry. They overheard conversations. They sensed tension. Even if no one explained anything, the message landed. Money is dangerous. Money disappears. Money causes stress. So the child's nervous system adapted. They learned to scan, to brace, to prepare for loss. As adults, this often shows up as anxiety around spending, saving, or investing. Not because they don't understand money, but because money activates an old threat response. Now let's talk about unpredictability. In some homes, money wasn't consistently scarce. It was inconsistent. Good months, bad months, sudden spending, sudden panic. This unpredictability teaches the brain one lesson: stability can vanish. So as adults, people may struggle with trust. They may hoard. They may overspend when money arrives. They may feel compelled to enjoy money quickly, before it disappears. This isn't impulsivity. It's adaptation. Now let's talk about emotional silence. In some families, money was never discussed. Bills were hidden. Stress was unspoken. Questions were discouraged. Children in these environments learn avoidance. They learn money is not safe to talk about. Money is confusing. Money should be ignored. As adults, this often becomes procrastination. Avoiding budgets, avoiding accounts, avoiding pension. Not because of laziness, but because money was associated with emotional shutdown. Now let's talk about conflict-heavy environments. In some homes, money was the source of arguments, voices raised, blame exchanged, emotions escalated. Children learned money equals conflict. As adults, they may avoid money conversations, avoid financial boundaries, avoid planning with partners, or they may recreate conflict unconsciously because it feels familiar. Now let's talk about over-control. In some households, money was tightly controlled. Every expense scrutinized, every decision questioned. Children learned mistakes are dangerous. There's no room for error. As adults, this can become perfectionism, fear of investing, fear of spending, fear of making the wrong choice. Analysis paralysis is often childhood fear in adult clothing. Now let's talk about abundance without guidance. Some children grew up with money present, but without emotional structure. Spending was unregulated. Money appeared when needed. Consequences were minimal. These children didn't learn restraint, not because they were spoiled, but because boundaries were unclear. As adults, this can lead to difficulty delaying gratification, not because they don't care about the future, but because the future was never emotionally connected to behavior. Now let's talk about money as love. In some homes, money was used to express care. Gifts replaced presents. Spending replaced conversation. Money softened guilt. Children learned money equals love. Spending equals connection. As adults, this can turn into emotional spending, buying to soothe, buying to connect, buying to feel worthy. Now, let's talk about money as power. In some families, money controlled decisions. Who had it spoke louder. Who earned more mattered more. Children learned money equals power. Money determines worth. As adults, this can show up as status spending, comparison, fear of being less than. Now let's talk about shame. Some children internalize shame around money. They felt different, embarrassed, less worthy. Shame is powerful. It doesn't motivate improvement. It motivates hiding. As adults, this can lead to secrecy, avoidance, self-sabotage. Now let's talk about repetition. The brain doesn't discard early lessons easily. It repeats them, not consciously, automatically. So people recreate emotional environments that feel familiar, even when those environments are painful. Now let's talk about why knowledge doesn't fix this. You can understand interest rates perfectly and still overspend. You can know investing theory and still panic sell. Because the behavior isn't driven by logic. It's driven by memory, emotional memory. Now let's talk about awareness. Awareness doesn't fix everything instantly, but it changes the relationship. When you realize this isn't stupidity, this isn't failure, this is learned response, shame loosens its grip. Now let's talk about healing. Healing money behavior doesn't start with tactics. It starts with compassion, understanding where patterns came from, why they made sense at the time, why they're still trying to protect you. Now let's talk about choice. Once awareness exists, choice becomes possible. Not immediately, not perfectly, but gradually. You begin to notice reactions. Pause before acting. Interrupt old loops. Now let's talk about rewriting patterns. Patterns are rewritten through experience. New experiences of safety. New experiences of stability. New experiences of calm around money. Slow, predictable, consistent. Now let's talk about boundaries. Healthy money behavior requires boundaries, internal and external. Boundaries with spending. Boundaries with helping others. Boundaries with comparison. Boundaries protect the nervous system. Now let's talk about the final truth. Your childhood shaped your money behavior, but it did not doom you. Those patterns were survival strategies. They kept you safe once. They just haven't been updated yet. And updating them doesn't require force. It requires understanding, patience, and repeated proof that you're safe now. Money doesn't need to be a battleground forever. When you change the emotional meaning of money, the behavior follows. Quietly, gradually, lastingly. And that's how generational patterns finally stop repeating, not through shame, but through awareness and compassion. There's another way childhood shapes money behavior that's rarely acknowledged. Children don't just learn money from what happened. They learn it from what didn't happen, from what was missing. If money conversations never happened, children learned silence. If reassurance never happened, children learned worry. If stability never happened, children learned hyper-independence. Absence teaches just as powerfully as presence. Now let's talk about emotional roles. Many children unconsciously take on roles around money. The responsible one, the helper, the fixer, the invisible one. These roles form in response to stress, and they don't disappear in adulthood. The responsible child often becomes the adult who oversaves, overcontrols, and struggles to enjoy money. The helper becomes the adult who gives too much, rescues others financially, and neglects their own security. The fixer becomes the adult who believes every money problem must be solved immediately, no matter the cost. The invisible one becomes the adult who avoids money entirely, hoping it won't notice them. These are not flaws, they are adaptations. Now let's talk about emotional inheritance. Children inherit not just money beliefs, but emotional reactions. If adults panicked around bills, children learned panic. If adults numbed with spending, children learned spending. If adults avoided reality, children learned avoidance. Even without explanation, the nervous system learned the pattern. Now let's talk about loyalty. Some people remain unconsciously loyal to their family's financial story. If my parents struggled, who am I to be comfortable? If my family never had much, having more feels wrong. If money caused pain, wanting it feels dangerous. This loyalty can limit growth, not because people don't want better, but because success feels like betrayal. Now let's talk about repetition compulsion. The brain repeats unresolved emotional patterns in an attempt to master them. So people recreate financial environments that feel familiar, not consciously. Emotionally, they overspend, then panic. They save excessively, then feel deprived. They avoid money, then feel ashamed. Each cycle is the nervous system replaying an old lesson. Now let's talk about why change feels threatening. Changing money behavior isn't just changing habits, it's changing identity. It means stepping out of a role that once kept you safe, and the brain resists that. Now let's talk about gentleness. Rewriting money behavior requires gentleness. Aggression triggers defense. Shame reinforces patterns. Force creates rebellion. Gentleness creates space. Now let's talk about micro updates. The nervous system updates slowly, not through dramatic breakthroughs, through small, repeated proof. Checking accounts calmly, spending intentionally without guilt, letting money sit without panic. Each experience sends a new signal. This is safe. Now let's talk about grief. Healing money patterns often brings grief. Grief for childhood stress. Grief for years spent anxious. Grief for decisions made in survival mode. Grief is not regression, it's processing. Now let's talk about self-trust. Many childhood money patterns undermine self-trust. People doubt their decisions, second-guess constantly, seek reassurance. Healing restores trust gradually, not through perfection, through consistency. Now let's talk about boundaries with the past. Honoring your childhood does not mean repeating it. Understanding where patterns came from doesn't mean keeping them. You can respect survival strategies and still outgrow them. Now let's talk about the generational shift. When one person changes their relationship with money, they don't just change their future. They change what gets modeled, what gets normalized, what gets passed down. Calm replaces panic. Clarity replaces avoidance. Choice replaces fear. Now let's talk about the final integration. Your money behavior makes sense. Even the parts you dislike, even the habits you judge, they were shaped in an environment where your nervous system was learning how to survive. Now you're in a different environment, and the nervous system can learn something new, not through criticism, through safety, not through force, through repetition, not through perfection, through patience. Now let's close with the deepest truth of this video. Your childhood shaped your money behavior, but it does not get the final say. You do, not by rejecting the past, but by understanding it, thanking it for protecting you, and gently choosing a different response now. That's not just financial growth. That's emotional freedom. And when money no longer carries the weight of old fear, it finally becomes what it was always meant to be: a tool, not a trigger.